Marcus Sterling's son, Noah, was impossible. That's what 6 doctors said. Oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD, behavioral problems. Maybe he was just spoiled. Maybe he needed discipline. Maybe. But Claire Bennett knew better. She knew because when she watched Noah cover his ears during a meltdown, count patterns obsessively, avoid eye contact like it physically hurt. She wasn't watching a problem child. She was watching herself at 9 years old, and in a moment of courage that could have destroyed her career, she broke every professional boundary and whispered, "I'm just like him." 3 words that would save a child. 3 words that would break a billionaire's cynicism. 3 words that would prove the most valuable expertise doesn't come from diplomas. It comes from living the struggle yourself. This is the story of 3 patterns that shouldn't fit together, but did. This story will take about 1 hour of your time. And because you are investing this time in me, I want to invest in you too. Subscribe because I only create stories that are worth your time. No fluff, no superficialities, just narratives that matter. And since YouTube tracks watch time, subscribing tells the algorithm this creator deserves to reach more people. So click subscribe because you are already giving me your most valuable resource, your attention. Let's make sure you get the best return on that investment. Fair enough? Let's get started. Marcus Sterling never imagined that the hardest thing in his life wouldn't be closing billion-dollar deals or facing furious shareholders. It would be understanding his own son. He sat in an Italian leather chair in Dr. Richard Brennan's office, the 6th, or was it the 7th, specialist who had promised to solve the problem. The room smelled of polished mahogany and old money, the kind of environment where problems should simply disappear. But Noah, his 9-year-old son, remained the enigma no amount of money could decipher. "Mr. Sterling," Dr. Brennan adjusted his glasses with that expression Marcus knew all too well, the mixture of professional condescension and poorly disguised defeat. "Noah presents behaviors consistent with oppositional defiant disorder. Combined with the severe ADHD we diagnosed previously, and considering the absence of a mother figure and your corporate schedule, well, it's understandable that the boy is acting this way." Marcus clenched his fists, acting this way, as if Noah were a problematic employee who needed reprimanding, as if the meltdowns weren't something deeper, as if those lost eyes of his son didn't haunt him every night. "He broke 3 iPads this week," Marcus replied, his voice more controlled than he felt. "Screamed for 4 hours straight because the shirt tag was wrong. Refuses to look anyone in the eye. And yesterday he hurt himself banging his head against the wall." The last sentence came out lower. Marcus Sterling, the man who faced corporate boards without flinching, nearly broke, admitting that aloud. Dr. Brennan sighed, opening a thick folder. "The reports from all previous specialists point to the same pattern. An extremely intelligent child, but spoiled. With all due respect, Mr. Sterling, growing up surrounded by so much privilege, without clear boundaries, without a father's constant presence." "I give him everything," Marcus cut in, his jaw tight. "The best toys, the best private schools, private tutors, but not yourself." The silence that followed was brutal. Marcus knew it was true. Knew that his trips to London, Tokyo, Dubai, building an empire, meant weeks away from home. Knew he had outsourced fatherhood to nannies, tutors, drivers. But Noah had everything. Wasn't that enough? "I recommend admission to Hartley Clinic," Dr. Brennan continued, sliding an elegant brochure across the desk. 3 weeks of therapeutic immersion, intensive behavioral psychiatry. They handle difficult cases." Difficult cases. That's what they called his son now. Marcus picked up the brochure. Hartley Clinic was the kind of place that didn't have prices on the website. If you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Elite pediatric psychiatry, private wing, award-winning medical team. It looked like a 5-star prison. "When can we start?" 2 weeks later, Marcus carried Noah's backpack through the gleaming corridors of Hartley Clinic. Everything was white, clean, silent, the kind of silence that seemed to judge. Noah walked 3 steps behind, his fingers drumming in a repetitive pattern against his thigh, eyes fixed on the floor. "Noah," Marcus tried, his voice coming out harsher than intended. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." The boy didn't lift his head, just continued the drumming, tap, 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 like a broken metronome. Marcus felt frustration rise up his throat. Why couldn't he just be normal? The thought came before he could censor it, and the guilt that followed was almost physical. "He'll be fine, Mr. Sterling," said Dr. Helen Reeves, the chief psychiatrist, with that professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Our team has dealt with hundreds of cases like Noah's. Structure, discipline, and proper medication will work wonders." Cases like Noah's, again, as if there were a manual. Marcus crouched in front of his son, forcing himself to find those eyes that always seemed to look through him, not at him. "You're going to stay here a few days, okay? These people are going to help you." Noah finally looked up, but not at Marcus's eyes, at his tie knot, and whispered something so low it was almost lost. "They don't understand." Before Marcus could respond, a nurse appeared, a young woman in a faded blue uniform, brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She carried a clipboard and had that air of invisibility that support staff always had in places like this, present but unnoticed. Claire Bennett observed the boy for just a second, only a second, and something changed in her eyes, something Marcus couldn't decipher. "Hello," she said softly, not approaching too closely, not forcing eye contact. "I'm Claire. Do you like patterns?" Noah paused his drumming, looked at her badge, not at her face, but at the printed letters, as if reading something more important than a name. And for the first time in weeks, he responded, "Patterns make sense." Claire nodded, as if that were the most natural thing in the world, as if it made perfect sense. Marcus felt something strange in his chest. Hope, or just desperation disguising itself as such. He stood up, straightened his suit, and forced himself to leave. In the hallway, he turned one last time. Noah stood next to Claire, his fingers still drumming, but slower now. And Claire was drumming too. The same rhythm, the same pattern. Tap, 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 tap. Marcus frowned. Was that part of their training? Mimicking the children, it seemed strange. But he had no more energy to question methods. He just wanted someone, anyone, to reach his son. As the automatic doors closed behind him, Marcus Sterling didn't know that the invisible woman in the blue uniform was about to turn his world upside down. Because Claire Bennett wasn't imitating Noah. She was recognizing herself in him. Claire Bennett learned to be invisible long before she wore a nursing assistant uniform. As a child, she discovered the world was easier when you didn't draw attention, when you didn't correct adults aloud about incorrect facts, when you didn't explain in exhaustive detail why the texture of school mashed potatoes made you want to crawl out of your own skin, when you learned to force eye contact for 3 seconds, not too much, not too little, and smile at the right moment, even if it never made sense why that was the right moment. Masking, that's what they called it. Hiding who you really were so others wouldn't see you as a problem. And Claire got good at it, so good that it took 23 years to receive the diagnosis that finally made everything click. Autism spectrum disorder, level 1. High functioning, they said, as if it were a compliment. As if it didn't mean she'd been breaking herself into small pieces her entire life just to fit into a world not made for her. Now, at 27, Claire was still invisible, but by choice. Nursing assistant at Hartley Clinic wasn't the dream job, but it paid the bills, and most importantly, nobody expected much from her. Doctors spoke about her, not with her. Head nurses gave orders without expecting opinions. Claire was the silent gear that kept the machine running, and that left her free to do what really mattered. Observe. Noah Sterling was admitted on a rainy Tuesday, and Claire knew something was wrong with the diagnosis before even reading the chart. She was organizing supplies in the pediatric wing closet when she heard the commotion, loud voices, quick footsteps, the unmistakable sound of something breaking. "Hold him down!" Dr. Reeves shouted, her voice losing all professional composure. "Someone call security!" Claire dropped the IV bottles and ran to the hallway. The scene hit her like a punch to the gut. Noah, the 9-year-old boy she'd briefly seen at admission, was curled in the corner of the recreation room, hands covering his ears, his entire body shaking. 3 medical staff members surrounded him, trying to approach. The fluorescent light above him flickered intermittently, emitting a low hum that probably no one else noticed. But Claire noticed. Claire always noticed. "Noah, you need to calm down," Dr. Reeves was saying, her voice firm but impatient. "We just want to help. Look at me when I'm talking to you." The boy began rocking, back and forth, and a low, guttural sound escaped his throat. It wasn't crying, it was something more primal, the sound of someone overwhelmed, breaking down. "Likely psychotic episode associated with ODD," Dr. Reeves murmured to the resident beside her. "Prepare a sedative, 2 milligrams of lorazepam." No. The word screamed inside Claire's head, but she bit her tongue. She was just an assistant. She had no voice here, but she had eyes, and she saw what they didn't see, the fluorescent lights, the humming, the way Noah pressed his hands over his ears, the rhythmic rocking, the fingers drumming against his own leg, even as he trembled, tap, 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 seeking predictability in chaos. Sensory overload. Claire knew this, knew it intimately, had lived it in noisy supermarkets, at birthday parties with music too loud, in doctors' offices with lights that burned her eyes. The difference was, she'd learned to hide it, to swallow the scream, to smile and say, "I'm fine," while wanting to tear off her own skin. Noah didn't know how to hide yet, or maybe he refused to. "Excuse me," Claire heard her own voice before deciding to speak. Everyone turned to her. Can I try something?" Dr. Reeves looked at her as if she'd spoken another language. "Bennett, this isn't protocol. We need to stabilize him before—" "30 seconds, Claire asked, surprised by the firmness in her voice. "Please." Maybe it was the desperation in her tone. Maybe Dr. Reeves was out of options. She sighed and waved her hand. 30 seconds, but keep a safe distance." Claire didn't have 30 seconds. She had now. She entered the room slowly, very slowly, keeping movements predictable. She didn't approach Noah. Instead, she sat on the floor 3 meters away, crossed her legs, and waited. Noah continued rocking, hands over his ears, eyes squeezed shut. Claire began drumming her fingers against her own knee. Tap, 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 the same pattern Noah used, constant, rhythmic, predictable. And then, without looking directly at him, because forcing eye contact was violence when you were breaking down, she whispered, "The lights hurt, don't they?" Noah paused his rocking, just for a second, but it was enough. "And the sound," Claire continued, her voice low, calm. "That humming that no one else hears, but you hear it. I hear it too." Noah's fingers loosened slightly around his ears. "I see you," Claire whispered. "I see that the world is too much. I see that you're not bad, you're just overwhelmed." And then Claire did the riskiest thing she'd ever done in her invisible career. She paused, took a deep breath, and whispered 3 words that broke all professional distance, all the mask she'd built. "I'm just like him." The silence that followed was absolute. Noah opened his eyes, not completely, but enough. And for the first time since entering that clinic, he looked, not at Claire's eyes, but at the space beside her, and that was enough. That was everything. You're like me?" His voice was so small, so full of broken hope that Claire felt something crack in her chest. Yes, she answered, continuing the tap, 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 tap. I am. Noah moved then. Not fast, never fast, but with intention. He crawled closer to Claire, still not looking directly, and sat beside her, not touching, just close, and began drumming too. Tap, 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 tap. Claire smiled, a small, true smile that no one but Noah would see. Patterns make sense, Noah whispered. They do, Claire agreed. They always do. From the hallway, Marcus Sterling watched it all through the glass window. He'd returned to get Noah's forgotten backpack and found himself witnessing this. His son, who screamed at doctors, who broke things, who hurt himself, was sitting calmly beside a nursing assistant he'd barely noticed. They were drumming together as if speaking a language only they knew. What did she do? Marcus asked, his voice hoarse. Dr. Reeves stood beside him, equally shocked. I don't know. I've never seen Noah respond to anyone like that. Marcus watched Claire, really saw her for the first time. The worn uniform, the simple ponytail, the way she didn't force Noah to do anything, just existed beside him. And something impossible happened in Marcus Sterling's chest, a man who didn't believe in impossibles. Hope. Not the bought hope of expensive offices and diagnoses in leather folders, but raw, fragile hope from seeing his son finally not alone. Who is she? Marcus asked. Dr. Reeves consulted her clipboard. Claire Bennett, nursing assistant, been here 2 years. Clean file, nothing notable. Nothing notable. Marcus disagreed. As he watched Claire whisper something that made Noah almost smile, he realized something fundamental. That invisible woman had just done in 3 minutes what 6 doctors couldn't do in 6 months. And Marcus Sterling, a man who solved problems with money and contracts, had no idea what to do with that. But he knew one thing: he wasn't going to let Claire Bennett disappear again. Claire didn't expect to be summoned to Dr. Reeves' office the next day. And she definitely didn't expect to find Marcus Sterling sitting there, his impeccable suit contrasting with the clinical chairs, eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach churn. She stopped at the door, her fingers automatically seeking the seam of her uniform pocket, her self-soothing movement, discreet enough that no one noticed, except Marcus noticed. She saw his gaze move to her fingers, then back to her face. "Sit down, Bennett," Dr. Reeves said, her tone more formal than usual. Claire sat, keeping her hands in her lap, forcing herself to stay still. "Mask, you know how to do this. Just smile politely and don't say too much." "About yesterday's incident," Dr. Reeves began, and Claire felt fear rise up her throat. She was going to be fired. She'd broken protocol. She had... "It was extraordinary," Marcus interrupted, his deep voice cutting through Claire's thoughts like a blade. "What you did with my son, I need to understand how." Claire blinked, once, twice. "Processing. Extraordinary?" The words died in her throat. How to explain without revealing, how to describe that she recognized Noah because she saw herself in him. That those 3 words she whispered weren't professional technique, but raw confession. "You said something to him," Marcus continued, leaning forward, "something that made him stop, breaking down. I need to know what it was." Claire looked to Dr. Reeves for some guidance, but the psychiatrist seemed as curious as the billionaire. "I said," Claire began, choosing each word carefully, "that I understood how he felt. That the lights and sounds were too much, that he wasn't being difficult, just overwhelmed. It was true, but it wasn't the whole truth." Marcus frowned. "All the other doctors tried to understand too. But you—" He paused, his eyes narrowing as if solving a complex equation. "You did something different. That drumming, the patterns. You didn't try to make him stop. You joined him." He saw too much. Claire felt the familiar tightness in her chest, that sensation of being exposed, of having the mask slip. She'd been careful her entire life, had hidden, had fit in, and now this man with eyes too sharp was seeing through her. "It's a mirroring technique," Dr. Reeves offered professionally, "used in behavioral therapy to create rapport." "It wasn't technique," Marcus said, without taking his eyes off Claire. "It was personal." The silence that followed was thick. Claire felt her heart beating too hard, too fast, felt the urge to run, to disappear, to go back to being invisible. But then she thought of Noah, of the way he'd sat beside her, finally not alone, of his whisper, "You're like me." So full of hope it had made her eyes burn. Some things are worth more than safety. "Can I—" Claire cleared her throat. "Can I speak with Mr. Sterling alone?" Dr. Reeves hesitated, but Marcus nodded. "Please." When the door closed, the silence was absolute. Claire forced herself to look at Marcus, not at his eyes, never comfortable at the eyes, but at the space between his eyebrows, a trick she'd learned years ago. "What did you say to my son?" Marcus asked, his voice lower now. Not demanding, almost vulnerable. Claire took a deep breath. "Mask or be seen, hide or help." "I said 3 words," she began, her hands squeezing each other. "3 words that are true, but that I've never said aloud at this job, because they make me different, and different in the medical world means less trustworthy, less capable, less—" "What did you say?" Marcus repeated, but this time there was something more in his tone. Urgency, yes, but also understanding. Claire closed her eyes and let go. "I'm just like him." The words came out in a whisper. "I'm autistic, Mr. Sterling, and the moment I saw Noah breaking down, I knew what no doctor here saw, because they were looking at diagnoses, at behaviors, at problems to be solved. But I was looking at a child who sees the world differently and is drowning because no one understands the language he speaks." The silence that followed was deafening. Claire opened her eyes, expecting to see disgust, doubt, the distrust she always saw when people found out. "Autistic? But you seem so normal. But you make eye contact. But you don't seem—" But Marcus Sterling wasn't looking at her with doubt. He was looking with something that seemed like revelation. "Autistic," he repeated, testing the word. "Noah is— My son is autistic?" "I'm not a doctor," Claire said quickly. "I can't diagnose. But everything I saw, the sensory overload, the repetitive patterns, the difficulty with eye contact, the way he processes the world, are classic signs. And if you'll trust me, I can help. Not because I have a degree, but because I lived it." Marcus stood and Claire braced herself to be dismissed, to hear that he'd seek real medical opinions, actual professionals. But he didn't go to the door. He went to the window, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. 6 doctors, he said, almost to himself. 6 expensive, renowned specialists with awards on their walls, and none of them saw it. None of them— He paused, turning to Claire. "Why not?" Claire could give the technical answer. Talk about spectrum, about masked autism, about diagnostic bias. But Marcus Sterling had just heard her truth. He deserved the complete truth. "Because they were looking for a problematic heir," Claire said, her voice firmer now. "Not a neurodivergent child. They saw wealth first, saw a spoiled boy without boundaries, with an absent father, and filled in the gaps with diagnoses that made sense to them. ODD, ADHD, behavioral problems, because autism doesn't fit the narrative they'd built." Marcus closed his eyes, his jaw tight. "I didn't see it either. I thought he just needed discipline, structure. I thought—" His voice failed. "I thought he was rejecting me on purpose." "He wasn't," Claire said softly. "He was just trying to survive in a world that doesn't make sense to him. And when no one understands your language, you eventually stop trying to speak. Marcus opened his eyes, and for the first time, Claire saw what was behind the billionaire's armor, a father completely lost. "Can you teach me that language?" The question was so simple, so impossible, so unexpected. Claire hesitated. "I'm just an assistant. Dr. Reeves will want to bring in specialists, certified therapists." "Fuck the specialists," Marcus said, and the words so raw coming from that polished man made Claire blink in surprise. "Specialists failed my son for a year. You reached him in 3 minutes, so I'm asking again, can you teach me?" Claire thought of Noah, thought of the way he'd whispered, "You're like me," with so much broken hope, thought of how she'd spent her entire life being invisible, being less, being assistant instead of person, and thought that maybe, for the first time, her difference wasn't weakness. It was exactly what Noah needed. "Yes," she said, "I can." Marcus nodded, something relaxing in his shoulders. "How much?" Claire frowned. "What do you mean? How much do you want? To be Noah's private therapist, to teach me to be the father he needs. Name a number." And there it was, the billionaire's equation, everything has a price. Claire felt anger rise, not hot, but cold, calculated. "I don't want your money, Mr. Sterling," she said, standing up. "I want access. I want you to let me work with Noah without Dr. Reeves undermining every decision because I'm just an assistant. I want you to show up. Don't send drivers or nannies. You. Because Noah doesn't need more money or expensive therapies. He needs someone who cares enough to learn his language." Marcus stared at her, really stared, and Claire forced herself not to look away. 3 seconds. You can do 3 seconds. "Deal," he finally said, extending his hand. Claire looked at the hand. She hated handshakes, the unpredictability of pressure, of timing, but she shook it anyway, and when their fingers touched, something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. 2 impossible worlds meeting around a child who needed both. "One thing," Marcus said, still holding her hand. "Those 3 words. I'm just like him. You said them to Noah, but I need to hear them too." Claire frowned, confused. Marcus moved closer, his voice low, intense. "Say it again. So I understand. So I see you, the way you saw my son." And Claire, who had spent her entire life hiding, who had made herself small and invisible and safe, did the bravest thing she'd ever done. She looked Marcus Sterling in the eyes, really in the eyes, not the trick between the eyebrows, and said, "I'm just like him. I see the world differently, and that's not broken, that's not wrong, that's just me." The silence that came after wasn't uncomfortable. It was the beginning of everything. Person stories. Marcus Sterling didn't believe in miracles. He believed in contracts, leverage, and due diligence. So when he returned to the office after his conversation with Claire, he did what he always did. He investigated. 48 hours later, he had a complete file on Claire Elizabeth Bennett on his mahogany desk, raised by a single mother in Ohio. Father unknown. Partial scholarship to community college, nursing course completed with honors, 3 simultaneous jobs to pay the bills, rented apartment in a modest neighborhood, bank account that rarely exceeded 4 digits, no significant debts, no addictions, no scandals. And there, buried in the medical history his lawyers managed to access, diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder at 23. Marcus closed the file, a bitter taste in his mouth. She told the truth. Why did that surprise him? Because in his world, everyone lied. Everyone wanted something. Everyone had a price. But as he reread the numbers, the nursing assistant salary, the 1-bedroom apartment, the absence of any luxury, a question formed, cold and cynical. How long until she asks for more? The next morning, Marcus arrived at Hartley Clinic unannounced. He found Claire in the recreation room with Noah, sitting on the floor, assembling a 1,000-piece puzzle. Not just any puzzle, a constellation map, black with golden stars. Patterns make sense, Noah was saying, fitting a piece with surgical precision. Orion always goes here, always. Always, Claire agreed softly. You like things that don't change? Yes, changes are... Noah paused, searching for the word noisy. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Changes are noisy. His 9-year-old son had just perfectly described why every business trip, every new nanny, every attempt to fix him had been a disaster. Claire looked up and saw him. She didn't smile. He was beginning to notice she rarely smiled socially, only when something genuinely touched her. Mr. Sterling, Noah was asking about you yesterday. He was. Marcus couldn't hide the surprise in his voice. Noah didn't lift his head from the puzzle. You said you'd come back. You came back. That's good. That's good. Not I missed you. Not I love you, Dad. But coming from Noah, those two words were everything. Can I speak with you? Marcus asked Claire. In private? Something passed through her eyes. Caution. But she nodded. Noah, can you continue alone for 5 minutes? 5 minutes are 300 seconds, Noah responded, already focused on the next piece. In the hallway, Marcus got straight to the point. He didn't believe in beating around the bush. I had you investigated. Claire froze, her fingers automatically going to the seam of her pocket. Of course you did. You make $32,000 a year, Marcus continued, watching her reaction. Live in a 1-bedroom apartment 40 minutes from here, no car, public transportation, work double shifts when you need to. And, Claire's voice was controlled, but he saw the tension in her shoulders. And you're working with the son of a billionaire. Marcus crossed his arms. How long until you ask for a raise, a bonus, a donation to cover expenses? The silence that came was icy. When Claire spoke, her voice was lower, more dangerous. You think I'm here for money? Everyone wants something. You want something, Claire corrected, her eyes finally meeting his. Not for 3 polite seconds, but with the intensity of someone who'd been underestimated too many times. You want me to fix your son, like he's a bad business deal that needs restructuring. And when you found out I'm poor, you decided I must be running a long-term scam. Marcus didn't deny it. In my world. I don't live in your world, Mr. Sterling. Claire took a step forward, and he noticed she was trembling. Not from fear, but from contained anger. I live in the world where people like you decide what we're worth, based on bank account numbers. Where being a nursing assistant means my observations don't matter, even when I'm right. Where being autistic means I have to work 3 times as hard just to be seen as half as competent. I didn't say, you didn't have to. Claire took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. But since you investigated my life, let me give you the data that was missing. I work with Noah because I understand Noah. Because I spent my entire childhood being called difficult, strange, problematic. Because no adult in my life had the patience to learn my language, so I had to learn theirs alone, and I almost broke myself in the process. She paused, the words coming out raw now. Your money can't buy what Noah needs. He doesn't need $10,000 a week therapies. He needs someone who sees him as a person, not as a project. And frankly, Mr. Sterling, you can't buy that. You have to be that. Marcus felt like he'd taken a punch. No one spoke to him like that. No one dared. And what about money? He asked, testing. You don't want anything. Claire stared at him for a long moment, then surprisingly laughed, a short sound without humor. You really don't understand, do you? I don't want your money. I want you to show up. I want you to stop treating Noah like a failed investment and start seeing him as your son. I want you to sit on that floor, assemble that ridiculously difficult puzzle, and learn that 5 minutes are 300 seconds to him. She took a step back, the anger draining. leaving only tiredness. But if you can't do that without investigating me, without questioning my intentions, without putting a price on everything, then maybe you're not ready to learn his language. Because in autism, Mr. Sterling, the currency isn't money. It's presence. It's patience. It's giving enough of a damn to try. Marcus stood in silence, each of her words burning. Now, Claire said, turning to the door, you can go back to your office and order more investigations, or you can go in there and ask your son which constellation he's assembling. Your choice. She didn't wait for an answer, simply returned to Noah, leaving Marcus in the hallway, alone with his expensive and useless cynicism. And for the first time in years, Marcus Sterling didn't know what to do, because Claire Bennett had just rejected something no one rejected, unlimited access to the Sterling fortune, and he had no idea what that meant. Marcus didn't go back to the office. He stood in that sterile hallway for 5 full minutes, 300 seconds, as Noah would say, processing what had just happened. Claire Bennett, a nursing assistant who earned less in a year than he spent on ties, had just refused his money, had refused him, and the most disturbing part, she was right. Marcus pushed open the recreation room door. Claire and Noah were still on the floor, the constellation puzzle half complete between them. Neither looked up immediately. Claire was teaching Noah about Cassiopeia, her voice low and steady. "Can I—" Marcus cleared his throat. "Can I join?" Noah paused, a piece suspended in the air. Looked at Claire, not at his father, as if asking permission. "Of course," Claire said softly. "There's space here." Marcus looked at the floor, his $3,000 Italian suit, the cold tile, the whole situation profoundly uncomfortable and uncorporate. He sat down anyway. "Cassiopeia is shaped like a W," Noah said, still not looking at Marcus, but speaking in his direction, which was progress. "Claire says it's like a throne in the sky." "She's a queen in mythology," Marcus replied, surprising himself by remembering. "A vain queen." "Vain means she thought she was too beautiful?" Noah asked. "Something like that." "That's illogical. Beauty is subjective." Noah fit a piece with satisfaction. "Claire says in autism, we see patterns other people don't see. Like how I know Orion has 3 stars in the belt, always, even when you can't see them all." Marcus looked at Claire. She was focused on the puzzle, but he saw the small smile, the genuine one, the one she reserved for real moments. "Claire is teaching you about autism?" Marcus asked. "She's teaching me about myself," Noah corrected, and that difference made something move in Marcus's chest. The 3 stayed in silence for a moment, just the soft sound of pieces being fitted. Marcus picked up a piece hesitantly, had no idea where it went. "Upper left corner," Noah said without looking. "Part of Ursa Major." "How do you know?" "Because I see the whole pattern in my head before assembling." Noah paused. "You don't see it?" "No," Marcus admitted. "I don't see it." "That's okay," Noah said, so casually that Marcus almost didn't notice the weight of those words. "It's okay. You don't see the way I see. Claire doesn't see complete patterns like me either, but she understands that I see. That's different." Marcus fit the piece where Noah indicated. "Perfect fit." "Different how?" "The doctors wanted me to stop seeing patterns," Noah explained, his fingers drumming lightly on his thigh. Tap, 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 tap. "They said I needed to pay attention to important things, but Claire says my patterns are important, because that's how my brain works." Marcus felt the lump in his throat. How many times had he told Noah to pay attention? How many times had he confused different with wrong? "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "For not understanding before." Noah finally looked at him, not in the eyes, but at his face, and that was more than he'd done in months. "Are you understanding now?" "I'm trying." "Trying is good," Noah said, returning to the puzzle. Claire says trying is already halfway there. Marcus looked at Claire over his son's head. She met his gaze this time, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. An hour later, when Noah was taken to occupational therapy, Marcus stayed. Claire was putting away the puzzle, movements precise and careful. "You were right," Marcus said, "about everything." Claire didn't respond immediately, focused on aligning the pieces perfectly in the box. "I spent a year trying to fix my son," Marcus continued, "when the problem was always me. I didn't know his language, didn't try to learn, just threw money at the problem and hoped someone would make him fit the world." "But now you're here," Claire said softly, "on the floor, assembling puzzles. That counts." "Does it?" "More than you know." Claire closed the box and finally looked at him. "Noah doesn't need you to be perfect, Mr. Sterling. He just needs you to try, to show up, to learn that 5 minutes are 300 seconds, and that matters to him." Marcus nodded slowly. "Teach me, please, not as an employee, as a partner, in this whole being a father to an autistic child thing that I clearly don't know how to do alone." Claire studied his face for a long moment. Marcus had the sensation of being evaluated in a way that financial statements never could capture. "Okay," she finally said, "but with one condition." "Anything? Stop calling me assistant like it's something lesser. I'm Claire, and what I know about Noah doesn't come from a diploma. It comes from having lived my entire life being him." Marcus felt the weight of that. The privilege he'd had of never having to hide who he was, of never being underestimated for something he couldn't control. "Claire," he said, testing the name, "teach me to see my son the way you see him." And Claire, who had spent her life being invisible, who had hidden to survive, did something revolutionary. She let herself be seen. "Tomorrow," she said, "you're going to spend the entire day here, not 1 hour, the whole day, and you're going to learn that Noah's world is just as valid as yours. Deal?" Marcus Sterling, who negotiated billion-dollar contracts, who never accepted terms without review, simply said, "Deal." And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was doing business. He felt like he was doing something that mattered. Marcus Sterling cancelled 3 board meetings, postponed a trip to London, and did something he hadn't done since Noah was a baby. Spent an entire day, uninterrupted, with his son. Claire had warned, "Don't try to force anything, just observe, be present." It seemed simple. It was terrifying. The morning started in the clinic's sensory room, a space Marcus had never seen, full of textures, soft lights, and strange objects that looked like toys but weren't. Noah went straight to a corner where there were tubes with colored liquid, bubbles rising in hypnotic patterns. "He can stay here for hours," Claire explained quietly, beside Marcus. "It's not that he's checked out, it's that he's processing. The outside world is too noisy sometimes. Here everything is predictable." Marcus watched his son, the way his fingers traced the tubes, following the bubbles, lips moving in silent counting. "I always thought he was ignoring me." "He never ignored you," Claire said softly. "He was just trying not to drown in sensory input. When you'd come home from trips with that strong cologne, talking loud, wanting immediate hugs, it was too much, too fast." Marcus felt the guilt like a punch. "I didn't know." "Now you know." Claire approached Noah but didn't touch. "Noah, your dad is here. He wants to learn about the bubbles." Noah didn't turn his head but responded, "There are 47 bubbles per minute in the blue tube, 52 in the red. The red one is faster." "You counted?" Marcus asked, genuinely impressed. "I always count." Noah paused. "You don't count?" "No." "Why not?" The question, so simple, so direct, caught Marcus off guard. "I never thought about counting." "Your brain doesn't need to." Noah finally looked in his direction, not at his eyes, but at his shoulder. Mine needs to. Claire says it's like breathing. I do it automatically. Claire smiled softly. Autistic brains seek patterns, numbers, sequences, routines. It's comforting when the world doesn't make sense. Marcus sat on the floor beside his son, slowly, telegraphing his movements as Claire had taught. What else do you count? And Noah, for the first time in months, began to talk, really talk, about the patterns in the floor tiles, 6 by 6, always. About how morning light hit at a different angle than afternoon light, 13 degrees difference, he'd calculated. About how the air conditioning sound changed at 2 p.m., scheduled maintenance, obvious. Marcus listened, really listened, and realized something devastating. His son was brilliant, always had been. He was just measuring with the wrong ruler. In the afternoon, Claire took them both outside. Not the clinic's immaculate garden, but a small public park 2 blocks away. Marcus hesitated. He's safe here, Claire said. But Noah needs to see that the world isn't just hospitals and therapies. He needs to see life. At the park, there were children screaming, dogs barking, cars passing. Marcus saw Noah tense immediately, hands going to his ears. Too loud? Claire asked, already pulling something from her bag. Noise-cancelling headphones. Noah put them on immediately, relief visible on his face. Claire led them to a quieter corner, near a tree. She pulled out a notebook and coloured pencils from her bag. Draw the patterns you see, she told Noah. Noah started slowly. Lines. Geometric shapes. The tree's shadow divided into precise angles. Marcus watched, fascinated. He's always drawn like this. Probably, Claire said, but someone must have told him it was wrong to draw like that he should draw real things like other children. Marcus closed his eyes. He had said that, exactly that. It's not wrong, Claire continued, her voice firm but gentle. It's how his brain sees, in structures, in logic, in patterns that don't lie. Unlike people, Marcus said, understanding. Unlike people, Claire agreed. People are unpredictable. Say one thing, mean another. Smile when they're angry. Autistics generally prefer direct honesty, no subtext. Marcus turned to her. Is that why you always speak so directly? Yes. Claire didn't seem offended. Social games are exhausting. I learned to play them to survive. But with Noah, I don't have to. I can just be honest. Must be freeing, Marcus said quietly. It is. Claire looked at him, really looked, and Marcus saw something there. Vulnerability, tiredness, but also something softer. You're learning fast. I have a good teacher. The moment stretched. Marcus realized they were sitting too close, that something had changed between them that day, that Claire was no longer just the assistant who had saved Noah. She was the person who was saving him too. Claire, Dad, Noah interrupted without looking up from his drawing. Do you want to draw with me? Marcus blinked. Dad, not Mr. Sterling, not silence. Dad, I'd love to, he said, his voice failing a little. But I don't know how to draw patterns like you. I'll teach you, Noah said, so simply, so generously. And there, in that noisy public park, Marcus Sterling, CEO, billionaire, man who commanded empires, learned to draw straight lines from a 9-year-old son who was finally letting him in. Claire watched the two of them, side by side on the ground, and felt something tighten in her chest. Something dangerous, something that felt dangerously like hope. Thank you, Marcus said quietly just to her, while Noah was focused. For what? For showing me that the greatest wealth isn't in my bank account. He paused, his eyes finding hers. It's here, in this moment, with him. Claire smiled, small but real. Now you're understanding. And when their fingers accidentally touched on the notebook they were sharing, neither pulled away. The bomb dropped on a Monday morning. Marcus was in the recreation room with Noah, practicing direct communication. "Dad, I need 15 minutes alone now, instead of meltdowns," when Dr. Reeves entered with 3 members of the clinic's medical board. The climate changed instantly. Official, cold. "Mr. Sterling," Dr. Reeves began, her voice too controlled. "We need to discuss Noah's treatment protocol." Marcus stood, instinctively placing himself between the doctors and his son. "It's okay, Noah. Keep working on the puzzle." Noah, wearing the noise-cancelling headphones Claire had suggested, just nodded and returned to the stars. In the hallway, away from small ears, Dr. Reeves wasted no time. "It has come to our attention that Assistant Bennett has been exercising unauthorized influence over Noah's treatment." "Claire is helping my son," Marcus said, his jaw tight, "something your team failed to do for months. Bennett doesn't possess credentials to diagnose or treat developmental disorders." Dr. Pacheco, head of the psychiatry department, intervened, and it was brought to our attention that she herself is a carrier of special needs. The way he said it, special needs, made Marcus's blood boil. "She's autistic," Marcus corrected, his voice dangerously low. "And that doesn't make her less capable. It makes her more qualified to understand my son." "With all due respect, Mr. Sterling," Dr. Reeves adjusted her glasses, "Bennett violated protocols by not declaring her condition at the time of hiring. Additionally, she implemented therapeutic methods without appropriate medical supervision." "Methods that work," Marcus cut in. "Noah is progressing more in 3 weeks with Claire than in 6 months with your appropriate medical supervision." "That's not the point," Dr. Pacheco said. "The point is professional integrity. Bennett hid relevant information. This raises questions about reliability, judgment." "She hid it," a calm voice came from the door, "because people like you use autism as an excuse to discredit us." Claire stood there, her uniform impeccable, but her fingers betraying nervousness as they manipulated the edge of her badge. "I didn't declare it because I knew exactly what would happen. I'd be treated as less competent, less trustworthy. My observations would be questioned not on merit, but on diagnosis." "Bennett," Dr. Reeves sighed, "no one is questioning your condition. But you overstepped boundaries, unofficial diagnosis, therapeutic intervention without license." "I never diagnosed," Claire interrupted, her voice trembling slightly but firm. "I observed, recognized patterns, and suggested approaches based on lived experience, something none of you have." "Lived experience doesn't replace medical training," Dr. Pacheco said, condescending. "No," Claire agreed. "But your medical training completely failed to identify a classic case of autism, because you were too busy seeing a spoiled heir instead of a neurodivergent child." The silence was brutal. "Out of line, Bennett," Dr. Reeves said, her tone icy. "No," Marcus intervened, stepping forward. "She's absolutely right. You failed. All of you. And now, instead of admitting the mistake, you're trying to discredit the only person who actually helped my son." "Mr. Sterling," Dr. Pacheco tried, "we understand your gratitude, but you must consider the legal implications. If Bennett continues exercising functions outside the scope of her position, the clinic could be held liable." "Then promote her," Marcus said simply. "Hire her as an autism consultant. Pay for her knowledge." "She doesn't have the necessary certifications." "Then I'll hire her," Marcus cut in, turning to Claire. "Private consultant, autistic communication specialist, competitive salary, full benefits, complete autonomy in Noah's treatment." Claire blinked, surprised. "Marcus, Mr. Sterling, please be reasonable," Dr. Reeves tried. "Bennett, despite being well-intentioned, cannot." "Cannot what?" Marcus felt the anger, that cold, calculated corporate kind, take over. Can't be autistic and competent at the same time. Can't understand my son better than doctors with expensive diplomas. Can't have value because she doesn't fit in your little box. He turned to the medical team, each word deliberate. My son was hurting himself, was being medicated for problems he didn't have, was being treated like a factory defect that needed a recall. And Claire, only Claire, saw him as a person. So here's what's going to happen. Either you work with her, respecting her expertise, or I take Noah out of here today and take all sterling funding from this clinic with me. The silence that followed was the sound of absolute leverage. That's extreme, Dr. Reeves said, but her voice had lost authority. No, Marcus responded, it's necessary, because my son matters more than your medical egos. And if you can't see Claire's value, then you don't deserve to treat him. He extended his hand to Claire. You decide. Stay here, where they'll never fully respect you, or work with me as a partner, helping Noah the way you know how. Claire looked at his hand, at the doctors who saw her as a problem, at the hallway where she'd been invisible for 2 years, and thought of Noah asking yesterday, is Claire leaving too? So many people had left his life. I'll stay, she said, not taking Marcus's hand yet, but not as an employee, as a collaborator, with equal voice, with equal respect. Deal, Marcus said immediately. Claire finally took his hand, firm, determined. So you two are... Dr. Reeves searched for words. Forming some kind of private arrangement? We are, Marcus confirmed. Forming a team to do what you couldn't, help my son thrive. And as the doctors left, defeated and grumbling about legal implications, Marcus realized something. He hadn't defended Claire for money or convenience. He'd defended her because for the first time in years, someone had seen him. Not the fortune, not the power, just the broken man trying to be a father. And Claire had done the same thing for Noah. The news leaked in 48 hours. Billionaire hires autistic assistant to treat son. Hartley Clinic in controversy. Marcus read the headline on his tablet while drinking coffee, the bitter taste in his mouth not coming from the beverage. They'd twisted everything, turned choice into scandal. Reduced Claire to a sensationalist headline. His corporate assistant James sat across the table, tense. The board is concerned, sir. The narrative is being shaped as if you're making irrational decisions. Some shareholders are questioning your emotional stability. My emotional stability, Marcus repeated, his voice dangerously calm. Because I chose someone qualified to help my son. Because you chose someone without formal credentials over an award-winning medical team, James corrected carefully. And the implications... Sir, there are rumors about the nature of your relationship with Miss Bennett. Marcus put the tablet on the table with controlled force. What rumors? That you're involved, emotionally. That your judgment is compromised. James hesitated. There are suggestions that she's taking advantage of a desperate father's vulnerability. The anger was instant, visceral. Claire isn't... I know, sir. James interrupted gently, but public perception matters, especially when you're considering publicly admitting that Noah is autistic. Marcus froze. How did you know? Dr. Reeves reached out, said you're considering a public statement about Noah's diagnosis. Sir? James leaned forward. This will change everything. How investors see you, how the media portrays the sterling heir. There's precedent of CEOs losing positions after revealing family weaknesses. Weaknesses, Marcus said, the word like poison. My son isn't a weakness. I agree, James said genuinely. But the corporate world is ruthless. You're asking for Noah to be publicly scrutinized, for your family to be dissected. Are you sure you want to expose him and Miss Bennett to that? Marcus drove to Claire's apartment without warning. It was small, in an old building that had seen better days, but when she opened the door, Hair down, without uniform, just jeans and a simple blouse. She'd never looked more real. "Marcus," she frowned. "Did something happen with Noah?" "No, I need—" He stopped, realizing he was standing in the hallway like an intruder. "Can I come in?" Claire hesitated just a second before opening space. The apartment was exactly as he'd imagined. Clean, organized, minimalist. Books about autism stacked with precision. A blanket with specific texture on the couch. A whiteboard on the wall with routines written in color codes. "They're saying you're taking advantage of me," Marcus said without preamble. Claire stopped in the middle of the room. "I know, I saw the news. And... She turned to him, arms crossed defensively. "Part of me wants to quit. Go back to being invisible. Because this, being exposed, judged, publicly dissected, is my worst nightmare." But Noah asked me yesterday if I was leaving him too." Her voice failed. "He's already been abandoned by so many people. Nannies who couldn't handle it. Therapists who gave up. Teachers who saw him as a problem. And you won't abandon him," Marcus said. Not as a question. "No." Claire lifted her chin, determination mixed with fear. "But Marcus, you need to understand what you're asking. If you publicly admit Noah is autistic, if you make me part of the narrative, they'll destroy me. They'll say I manipulated you, that I seduced a vulnerable father, that—" "I know," Marcus interrupted, taking a step forward. "I know exactly what they'll say. About you, about Noah, about me." He paused, vulnerability raw in every word. "But I'm tired of hiding, tired of trying to make my son fit into a world that wasn't made for him. Tired of pretending I don't need help." Claire studied him. "This will cost more than money, Marcus. It'll cost your privacy, your control, the image you built." "I know." He moved closer. "But for the first time in years, I have my son back. He talks to me, draws with me, lets me in, and that you are worth more than any corporate image." The silence between them was thick, heavy with unspoken things. "Tomorrow," Marcus said, "I'm holding a press conference. I'm going to announce that Noah is autistic, that Hartley Clinic failed to diagnose him, and that you, Claire Bennett, autistic woman, nursing assistant, were the one who finally saved us." "Marcus, but I won't do it without your permission," he continued, "because you're right. It'll expose you, and I don't have the right to make that choice for you." Claire walked to the window, looking at the street below. Marcus saw her fingers drumming against her thigh. Tap, 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 seeking pattern amid emotional chaos. "If I say no," she finally said, "you do the statement anyway about Noah?" "Yes," Marcus answered honestly. "He deserves to be seen, not as a problem but as a person." "And if I say yes?" Claire turned. "If I agree to be part of this?" Marcus held her gaze. "Then we face it together. You, me, and Noah, like a family." The word hung in the air. Family. "We're not a family," Claire said quietly but without cruelty. "You're my... what? Employer? Client?" "No," Marcus said, closing the distance between them. "You're the person who taught me to be a father, who saw my son when no one else did, who didn't give up on us when you had every reason to." He paused, vulnerable in a way he'd never been. "You're the person I'm in love with." Claire stopped breathing. "I know it's complicated," Marcus continued quickly. "I know the timing is terrible, that they'll say it's convenient, that it's—" "You're in love with me?" Claire interrupted, her voice small. "Yes." No hesitation, no cynicism, just raw truth. "Why?" The question, so direct, so autistic, almost made Marcus smile. "Because you showed me that simplicity is wealth, that honesty is worth more than games, that being seen, really seen, is the greatest gift anyone can give." He reached for her hand slowly, telegraphing intention. "And because, when I'm with you, I don't need to be the CEO or the billionaire. I can just be Marcus, The man who's learning to count bubbles and draw patterns. Claire looked at his hand, then at his eyes, and for the first time since they'd met, she maintained eye contact. Not 3 socially acceptable seconds, but really looked. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay? Okay to the press conference. Okay to facing this together." She took a deep breath. "Okay to this, whatever it is." Marcus intertwined his fingers with hers. "It's love, Claire. It's complicated and imperfect and real love." And when he kissed her, slowly, respecting her boundaries, giving time to process, Claire finally stopped hiding. The press conference was scheduled for Tuesday, 10 a.m. Marcus Sterling, CEO of Sterling Industries, rarely gave personal interviews. When he announced the theme, a personal statement about family, the media went into a frenzy. Claire was backstage, wearing noise-cancelling headphones to block out the chaos of cameras being set up. Journalists talking loudly, the whole world waiting for blood. "You don't have to be here," Marcus said, appearing beside her. "I can do this alone." "No," Claire replied, removing the headphones. "Noah is watching at home. He needs to see that the people he loves don't run when things get hard." Marcus took her hand, intertwining fingers. 30 seconds, people," someone shouted. Claire took a deep breath, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, the pattern calming her racing heart. Marcus went to the podium alone. The room exploded in flashes and simultaneous questions. He raised his hand, asking for silence. "My name is Marcus Sterling," he began, his voice firm, "and I came here today not as a CEO, but as a father." The room went absolutely quiet. "My son Noah is 9 years old. He's brilliant, he's kind. He sees patterns where no one else does. And for an entire year, I tried to fix him because I didn't understand that he was never broken." Marcus paused, genuine emotion in his voice. "Noah is autistic, and I failed him by not knowing, by not seeing, by not listening," murmurs began. Cameras focused more intensely. 6 medical specialists misdiagnosed my son," Marcus continued, "not from incompetence but from bias. They saw a wealthy, problematic heir. They didn't see a neurodivergent child needing understanding." He looked directly at the cameras. "It was a nursing assistant named Claire Bennett who finally saw my son, not despite being autistic, but because she is. She recognized in him what she'd lived her entire life. And she saved us," Marcus signaled. Claire felt her stomach turn, but forced her legs to move. She went up to the podium. The sound of camera clicks was like insects, but she focused on one thing, Marcus's hand holding hers. "This is Claire Bennett," Marcus said, protective. "And before you ask the questions you're already formulating, no, she's not taking advantage of me. No, our relationship isn't inappropriate. And yes, I love her, because she taught me that being different isn't a defect. It's just different." The room exploded. Questions shouted from all angles. "Mr. Sterling, does this affect your position as CEO? Miss Bennett, how do you respond to accusations of conflict of interest? Will the boy live a normal life?" Marcus raised his hand again. "One last thing. For any parent watching who's struggling to understand a child who seems different, seek help. Real help. Don't assume difficult behavior is disobedience. It might be a different brain trying to navigate a world not made for it. And for autistic people watching, you don't need to hide. You're not less. You're essential." He left the podium, Claire beside him, ignoring the screaming questions. Backstage, she finally breathed. "You did it," she whispered. "You really did it." "We did it," Marcus corrected. 3 weeks later, things weren't easier. The media had been brutal. Shareholders had questioned. Internet trolls had attacked. But something unexpected happened. The world also responded with love. Thousands of families wrote, sharing stories of children finally correctly diagnosed. Autistic adults thanked them for representation. Sterling Industries' stock, defying predictions, rose. investors valuing authentic leadership. And Noah? Noah flourished. Marcus had completely restructured his life. Fewer trips, more presence. A home office where Noah could visit him with adjustable lighting and sensory spaces. Claire had officially become a neurodivergent communication consultant, not just for Noah, but for a program Marcus funded in 6 hospitals. She trained doctors, wrote protocols, gave voice to people who'd always been silenced. On a Saturday afternoon, the 3 of them were at the park, the same one from weeks ago. Noah was on the swing, swinging in precise rhythm, counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. "He's happy," Claire said, sitting beside Marcus on the bench. "He is," Marcus agreed. "For the first time, he is." "And you?" Claire asked, looking at him. "Are you happy?" Marcus turned to her, and in that face that used to be just a corporate mask, there was now warmth. Real. "I didn't even know what happiness was until you. I thought it was having more, building more, controlling more." He took her hand. "But happiness is this. Saturday at the park, my son swinging, you beside me." Claire smiled. That genuine, rare smile. "That's very cheesy for a billionaire." "You made me cheesy," he laughed, "among other terrible things." "Terrible? You made me vulnerable, emotional, dependent on constellation puzzles and predictable routines." Marcus leaned in, whispering, "You made me human." Before Claire could respond, Noah jumped off the swing and ran to them. Ran, initiating physical contact for the first time. "I made a game," he said, excited, "for all 3 of us. It's called People Who See Me." "How do you play?" Marcus asked. "We say one true thing that another person sees in us, something no one else sees." Noah looked at Claire, not in the eyes, but at her face, and that was everything. "Claire, you see that I'm smart, not problematic." Claire felt her eyes burn. "I see it, Noah. I always have." Noah turned to Marcus. "Dad, you see that I love you, even when I don't say it." Marcus's voice failed. "I see it, son, and I love you too." "My turn," Noah said. "Dad, you see that Claire is brave. She doesn't hide anymore." Marcus looked at Claire, emotion raw. "I see it. She's the bravest person I know." Claire wiped a tear. "And I see both of you. I see a family that chose to see each other, really see." Noah smiled, that wide, beautiful smile that appeared more and more. "We're the 3 patterns that fit together." And there, in that simple park, the impossible family no one would have predicted sat on the ground and started drawing constellations together. Marcus, who had built an empire with cold numbers, now drew stars with his son. Claire, who had hidden her entire life, now existed in full light, and Noah, who had been called impossible, now simply was, loved, understood, seen. "I love you," Marcus whispered to Claire, while Noah counted stars. "I know," Claire responded, smiling. "You see me. It's impossible not to love someone who really sees you." And in that moment, Marcus Sterling finally understood the greatest lesson. True wealth wasn't in what he possessed. It was in who he became beside the people who made him better. 6 months later. The morning started differently in the Sterling house now. Not with aggressive alarms or urgent meetings, but with pancakes. Noah was in the kitchen, counting the ingredients out loud. 2 eggs, 1 cup of flour, 3/4 cup of milk. The patterns have to be just right, or it won't be good. Claire was beside him, not interfering, just present. "You're right. Recipes are delicious math." Marcus walked in, tie loosened. He had stopped wearing a suit at home, one of the many adjustments. "Good morning, family." Family. The word that used to scare him was now his favorite. Noah held up his hand for a high five, the form of physical contact he preferred, and which they had learned to respect. Marcus slapped his palm with exaggerated enthusiasm, making Noah chuckle. "Dad, you're being dramatic again," Noah said. but the smile was genuine. "It's my job," Marcus replied, stealing a quick kiss from Claire. She made a theatrical face that made Noah laugh more. "You guys are weird," Noah declared, returning to the pancakes. "Thank you," Claire and Marcus said in unison, exchanging knowing glances. After breakfast, the Saturday routine continued, and routines they had learned were sacred. Park at 10 a.m., lunch at 12:30 p.m., quiet time at 2 p.m., flexibility within structure, not chaos disguised as spontaneity. At the park, Marcus watched Noah interact with other children, not in the typical way, no ball games or running, but showing a younger boy how to identify different types of clouds, teaching patterns, sharing his world. "He's growing," Claire said, sitting next to Marcus on the bench. "Thanks to you." "Thanks to us," she corrected. "You could have kept trying to force him to be someone else, but you chose to learn his language. That was not a small thing." Marcus took her hand, the gesture now natural. "Claire Bennett, will you marry me?" Claire choked. "What?" "Marry me." Marcus had no ring. He had learned that surprises were complicated for her. "I should have planned something elaborate, I know. But I realized something this morning, making pancakes with both of you. I don't want a single day without this, without you, without us." Claire processed, her fingers now drumming on his thigh, tap, 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 seeking pattern. "You're proposing to me in a public park, without a ring, while your son draws clouds?" "Yes," Marcus smiled. "Because you hate grand gestures. Because simplicity is what matters, and because Noah is right there, a part of it all." "Did you talk to Noah about this?" "I did. Yesterday. I asked him how he'd feel if Claire lived with us forever. And," her voice was trembling, "he said, she already lives here. She just doesn't sleep here, but I would like her to sleep here because she makes the best waffles and understands when I need quiet." Claire laughed, tears in her eyes. "That is the most autistic proposal anyone could ever make." "That's why it's perfect," Marcus said, vulnerable. "So, will you?" Claire looked at Noah, who was now explaining cumulonimbus to two fascinated children. She looked at Marcus, the man who had chosen to destroy his own public image to protect his son. She looked at the life they had built, imperfect, non-traditional, but profoundly real. "Yes," she whispered, "but with conditions." Marcus chuckled. "Of course there are conditions. Noah chooses the wedding music, nothing too loud, and the ceremony has to be under 30 minutes because long social events are exhausting." "Deal." Marcus pulled her closer. "Any others?" "You keep making pancakes on Saturdays. It's Noah's favorite routine." "Our favorite routine," Marcus corrected. "And yes, forever." That night, after Noah went to sleep, with his 45-minute transition routine that they religiously respected, Marcus and Claire sat on the porch. "You changed my life," Claire said softly. "I had accepted being invisible, having a small job, never being fully seen, and you made me visible. You made me." "No," Marcus said, intertwining his fingers with hers. "You were always visible. I just learned to look properly." He paused. "You saved Noah, but you saved me too. I was building an empire, but losing what mattered. You brought me back." "We saved each other," Claire said. "That's what family does." Family, not the family they were born into, but the one they chose. Three people seeing the world differently, finding patterns in each other, creating something new. Inside, Noah wasn't truly sleeping. He was lying down, looking at the ceiling, counting the shadows. 1, 2, 3, 4. He could hear Marcus and Claire on the porch, low voices, laughing. Dad laughed more now. Before the pancakes and Claire, he almost never laughed. Noah took his sketchbook, the one Claire had given him with good texture paper. He opened it to the latest page, 3 connected constellations, Orion, Cassiopeia, and a new one he had invented. He had called it the Sterling Family. Three main stars, patterns intertwining, creating something that didn't exist before. Noah smiled into the darkness of the room. Not the social smile he had to force, but the real one, the one that only appeared when he was truly happy. Tomorrow he would show the drawing to Claire and Dad. They would understand. They always understood now. We are the three patterns that fit together, Noah thought, repeating his own favorite phrase. And for the first time in his 9 years, Noah Sterling was not alone in the world that was too loud. He had people who spoke his language. He had a family that saw him, and that, as Claire always said, was the greatest wealth of all.